empezar a hablar.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Buenos Aires Open Center webinar for teachers. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Monica Marenzi, and I'm the Business Development Manager at Buenos Aires Open Center. Also with us today, Mariana Lotito, Center Exams Manager, Buenos Aires Open Center.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you find this seminar interesting and useful, and it's nice to see you this Saturday.
And Martín Tavares, Communications Manager.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Martin. And Melissa Schianchi, educational consultant who has joined our team very, very recently.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm really excited to be part of the team and to start working with you all.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We are truly delighted to share this event with you. I know that most of you are actively involved in teaching English and preparing students for Cambridge English qualifications, helping learners get ready for the many challenges of our global world. Your work is incredibly valuable, and I want to personally thank you for your commitment and dedication. In just a moment, I'll share the agenda for today's session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box, and we'll do our best to address as many of them as possible. Today, the presentation is the ins and outs of teaching B2 first exam classes. We are very pleased to welcome Verónica Quintieri, who is a graduate teacher from Lenguas Vivas, Juan Ramón Fernández, and holds a diploma in English language teaching from Cambridge University. Verónica is an experienced IELTS examiner, a speaking examiner, and team leader for Cambridge English qualifications, and a regular Cambridge presenter. She has taught at Lenguas Vivas Secondary School, lecturing in Language 1 for the Translators course and Language 3 for the Teacher Training course. She also worked at International House, Buenos Aires for over 20 years, teaching a wide variety of levels, courses, and age groups. In her session, Verónica will provide an overview of the reading, use of English, and listening papers of the B2 first exams, and will take a closer look at the writing paper, offering practical insights and tips for the classroom. Next, we'll hear from Gabriela Pellegrini. Gabriela graduated as a teacher from Lenguas Vivas, Juan Ramón Fernández, in 1992. Between 1993 and 2001, she taught phonetics and phonology and also worked as a Cambridge English examiner during the early stages of her career. She later took on the role of head of secondary at a prestigious bilingual school in Recoleta, where she has been teaching pronunciation and oral communication since 2010. Over the years, Gabriela has helped learners of all levels, both in schools and in private lessons, to develop their spoken English skills with greater accuracy and confidence. In her presentation, Gabriela will share practical strategies for supporting learners' pronunciation and oral communication, and how these skills can be effectively integrated into exam preparation and classroom activities. Feel free to take notes and don't hesitate to share your thoughts and questions in the chat as we go along. Now, let's begin with our first presentation. Over to you, Verónica.
Good morning. Let me share my presentation. Can you see my presentation now? And thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you enjoy our presentations. I hope you find them useful. As Moni said, please use the chat box if you have any questions. I will be asking you some questions as we go through the presentation. So if you want to participate, please use the chat box to write in your answers, okay? So this is what we are going to be talking about today. So first of all, a quick look at the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the levels, what they mean, okay, what they represent, where our students are when they join our B2 first classes, what's next. Then a closer look at the different papers in the first certificate exam. And finally, look at writing, the writing tasks, and a little bit about assessment, okay? So these are the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, okay, the levels, 6 levels from A1, A2, basic user, to C1, C2, proficient. And these are what they do with these levels. The aim is to standardize and to describe achievement of language learners at the different stages of their learning process. And they are defined by means of can-do statements. So we know what learners can do, what abilities, what linguistic abilities they have at the different levels. So these are the Cambridge exams, okay, Cambridge qualifications, 8 exams, one, okay, that are aligned with the Common European Framework for Reference levels, 1 exam per level, except A2. You see here you have 2 exams at A2, A2 Key for Schools or A2 Key and Flyers, which is young learners, and then 1 exam per level. We see here, we are at B2 now, and you see that you've got for B2, B1, and A2, there are 2 exams. You see, you have B2 for schools, B2 first, preliminary for schools. Okay, so there is a B for schools format. Why does that happen? Why a for schools version? First of all, because they are meant for school-aged learners, and the idea is that they have an exam which is the same as the standard version. So the same format, the same task types, the same focus, the same length, the same everything, except for the topics. So for schools exams, learners will have texts, they will read texts, and they will listen to texts which are based with the topics are more closely related to school-aged learners. Okay, so they will hear, for example, students talking about school trips instead of people talking about work-related issues. Okay, so the content, the treatment of topics is different. The source material is different, okay, where the material comes from, school magazines, blogs. So if you ask me, there is really no reason why school-aged learners should be taking standard exams, standard Cambridge qualifications, when there is an exam which is going to be a lot more appealing to school-aged learners. Okay, so we said that these are the Cambridge qualifications. This is what students do at primary school, usually young learners, up to A2 Flyers, lower secondary school, up until B2 first, okay? And upper secondary school, especially bilingual schools, students sometimes get to C1 advanced, sometimes even proficiency. Our students come from a B1 course, okay? So they may or may not have taken B1 preliminary, but they have that B1 level and are ready to tackle a B2 level. So what abilities? Remember we said that these levels are defined by means of can-do statements. What abilities do our students have when they join us? They can read simple textbooks, simple articles in English. They can write emails, letters on everyday subjects. They can also write stories at B1. The students to B2 level. So our students will need to further develop their skills because now they need to be able to read and understand texts on topics that they are not familiar with. They will need to express views, opinions in detailed and readable way, in a detailed and readable way, and be able to give reasons. Pay attention to these keywords because we will be coming back to these concepts later on. And they will have to identify emotions, feelings, attitudes, both in written English and in spoken English. For instance, approval, disapproval, okay, agreement, and write. Remember that at B1, it was just emails and stories. Now they will also have to be able to write essays, reports, reviews, articles. This is the exam. So the exam is made up of 4 papers. But now those of you who are familiar with B1 preliminary will see that there is a separate use of English component. B1 is made up of 4 parts: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, each one carrying 25% of the marks. Now we have a separate use of English component, okay, which comes within why. Why a separate use of English component? Any ideas? Why do you think we need, based on what we said before, why do we need a separate use of English component? Yes, okay. So now we said that our students need, remember, be able to write detailed English, okay? So they will need more focus, a greater focus on language. So this is what's one of the new things at first, okay? More focus on vocabulary and grammar. You see, here you have the breakdown. So you have 5 sections now, each one carrying 20% of the marks. So use of English is as important as the other skills. What are the main challenges at this level? Well, as we just said, greater focus on language. So our students will need to work more closely on language, collocations, grammatical structures. At this level, there are no vocabulary lists. If you're familiar with B1, A2, and young learners, you know that we're always given in the handbooks and also on the website, you have these vocabulary lists, structures lists, function lists, so teachers know what they need to cover, okay? What material, what language will come up in the exam. There is no such thing at B2. So how much vocabulary? The more, the better. Okay, so the more vocabulary students know, the more vocabulary we expose them to, the better prepared they will be. The other challenge is, as we said before, unfamiliar topics. So that means they will come across unknown vocabulary, and they will need to develop strategies for working out the meaning of these unknown items of vocabulary. And variety of writing tasks. So let's go paper by paper, concentrating mainly on the differences between what students are familiar with and what's new at the level. This is the reading and use of English paper at B2, 7 tasks. Students who come from a B1 course and students who've done B1 preliminary will be familiar with all of these tasks except for 2. tasks. And the two tasks which are completely new to them are, any question, any thoughts? Again, use the chat box. Okay. Yeah, word formation and keyword transformation. So those tasks are completely new for B1 students. All the other tasks they will have dealt with, they will have seen at a B1 course. Parts 1 and 2, they are new, they're not new. Okay, so these are tasks they're familiar with. Of course, now they will be a little longer. There will be more, of course, the level of the language will be different, but still they will have the same format. So they are given at B2, they have 2 texts with 8 blanks, 8 words are blanked out. Part 1 tests mainly vocabulary, and it's called a multiple choice cloze. So for each question, for each gap, they are given 4 choices, okay? 4 words they have to choose from. And the focus is mainly on vocabulary, okay? Collocations, set expressions. Part 2, again, another text with 8 gaps, but this time the focus is mainly on grammar. There may be some collocations, some set phrases, but mainly function words. Those will be the words they have to put back into the text. So that's, for example, okay, here you have the list of words that they may have to write in. Articles, the, a, and auxiliary verbs, do, does, will, linking words, negative words, not, neither, nor, possessive adjectives, my, your, his, prepositions, relative pronouns, who, whose, which, words of comparison, more, less, than, so mainly grammar. This is the multiple choice cloze. Remember I said a text with gaps, 4 options. So what do we do? First of all, how do we help our students? First of all, they read the text. It's very, very important that you get students to read and understand what the text is about, okay? They cannot possibly start filling in gaps if they don't know what the text is about, if they don't understand what they're talking about. You can check understanding by asking a couple of questions about what the main topic is, right? And then they read again, stopping at each gap and looking at the 4 options that they are given. For each option, I always tell my students that 2 of them can easily be discarded because they will immediately realize they are incorrect. But there are 2 options which are like a little bit more obscure. So for those 2, they will have to read carefully, read closely, look at the words before and after the gap so that they can decide which is the correct answer. So have a quick look. Read the text. 0 is always an example, okay? So there will always be an example at the top. 0 is always an example. So here, for instance, okay, do you find it hard to resist playing with your phone when chatting with friends? It is considered by some to be manners. So they stop, they look at the options, and they say, okay, which are the ones I can readily cross out? Which are the ones I know are not correct? What would you say? Yeah. Maybe I would cross out maybe low and rude. I know that they're not correct. And then I say, is it bad? Is it wrong? So that's when they look, okay? And based on their knowledge of language, on all the vocabulary they've been exposed to, they choose the right answer, okay? Okay. How about the other 2? Playing with objects is new. So little new, I think I will probably cross that out. Okay, least new, and then it says, okay, is it nothing new, neither new? They choose, okay? It's very, very important that after they've put in all the answers, after they've chosen all the right answers, they check again, they read it again, okay, to see if they've made the right decisions. Okay, for the last one, at ease. Okay, so that's part one. As I said before, the best way to help students do this exercise well, in my experience, is to expose them to a variety of texts, to get them to listen, to get them to read. The more English they're exposed to, the better they will perform. Because remember we said no vocabulary lists, so we don't know what vocabulary they might have to deal with in this exercise, okay? The second one is the open close. As we said, here grammar is the focus. Blanking out, we blank out function words like articles, prepositions. Again, you get them to read. Again, there will be an example at the top. Okay, you get them to read. You ask questions on general understanding, and then they go gap by gap, filling in the gaps, okay? So have a quick look. So you can even personalize it, okay, before you start to activate previous knowledge. So how I met a good friend, so asking them, how did you meet your best friend? How do teenagers usually make friends? Where do you meet people? So you can always personalize the texts, and then they start filling in the gaps. So on my first day, you see, this is what we said before. So this was, we said mainly grammar, but here, for example, they're testing a collocation, to make friends. I waited in the playground so linking word of purpose. The ridiculous thing, yes, was, okay. Pronouns. Okay, so you see, mainly function words. How can we help our students? Well, it's very easy to create your own open-close tests. You can use any text that you've been using, paragraphs from texts that you've dealt with in class, or you can even ask them, give them a paragraph, and they blank out the function words, and then they test each other. There is a website here that you can also use. This is an open-close creator. The only thing is that here what you do is you copy and paste a text, but you need to choose what kind of words you want them to blank out. So they always blank out the same type of word. So prepositions, or you can choose linking words or articles. So it's okay, it's useful, especially for prepositions, which is always a difficult issue, okay, a difficult part, so that's useful. New tasks, part 3 and part 4. Part 3 is word formation. What they test here is mainly knowledge of parts of speech. So students need to know whether we need verbs or adverbs or adjectives. They need to know prefixes and suffixes, what prefixes do. Prefixes usually change the meaning of words, remake, misunderstand, teacher. Suffixes change the kinds of words, to make nouns, to make adjectives. Spelling, they need to know spelling rules. They need to be able to make spelling changes to words. There will be some grammar, of course, so there will be some focus on grammar a little, because sometimes they have to put verbs in the right tenses, or there will be subject-verb agreement, so the S on the verb, plural, singular nouns. So there will be some focus on grammar as well, but mainly word formation. Again, a text they will read and understand before they start filling in the gaps. 0, always an example. And then what you need to do is train them to read and predict what kind of word they're going to use in each case. So for example, the German Karl Friedrich Goss, and the word is mathematics. The word at the end of the line is the word they have to use to make the new word. Okay, so this is the root word. So what kind of word do they need here? The German blah, blah, blah. So they need a noun. They say, well, but mathematics is a noun. Well, yes, but here we need a noun person, okay? Because we're talking about a man. So the answer is mathematician. And then you can help them. Okay, what other nouns, people, can you make by adding "yan" to the word? Okay, so help them. Electrician, musician, okay? And you move on to number 2. What kind of word do we need here? Made the first of several important something. Something is a noun. Discover is a verb. So which is the noun? The noun is discovery. But do we need the noun in the plural or in the singular? In the plural. Why? Because we have several. You see, all this work you need to do with your students so that they know what to look out for, how to read for clues. Okay, apart from, of course, understanding what we're talking about. Okay, then we go to number 3, and it says, call the answer. What kind of word do we need? Okay, we need a verb. What tense? Okay, we're talking about somebody who lived in the 18th century, so produced. And then here it says the formula he devised to do this is still used by scientists worldwide to them. What kind of word do we need? We have an infinitive. We need a verb. How do we make verbs from adjectives? By adding a prefix. Which prefix do we add? En. Enable. Can you think of any other verbs which use the which are made by adding en? So you have ensure, encourage, enforce, okay? So again, use the activity to help them build up their knowledge of vocabulary and word formation. And the last one, they come up with blah, blah, blah. To maths problems, we need a noun, again, plural or singular, plural, because we're speaking in general, okay? So here they need to know a lot about meaning of prefixes and how to make nouns from adjectives, verbs, okay, all the rules of word formation. And one way to help them, I use this a lot, this is Puzzle Maker. It's very, very useful to practice lots of things, vocabulary, collocations, spelling. You can create your own crossword puzzles, your own anagrams, okay, word searches. So very useful for spelling, useful for vocabulary revision, very useful website. The other new task, which is, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most of my students, the most difficult task for the use of English paper, is the keyword transformation. What they get is a sentence and then a keyword, which they must use but mustn't change to rewrite the sentence, keeping to the meaning. Okay, they have to keep to the meaning of the original sentence given. Why is it difficult? Because students need to be able to play around with the language. They need to be able to say things in different ways, using different structures. And they need to have all these structures and all this vocabulary at their fingertips, so they can easily move, they can easily change from one structure to the other. What you do, okay, you get them to read, you get them to look at the keyword, and think of what they are looking for. What is it that they are looking for? So that you see, remember that here they can test everything. And that's why, I mean, that's what makes this task challenging. We said that part 1 was mainly vocabulary, part 2 was mainly grammar, part 3 is mainly word formation and spelling. Here, everything comes together, okay? So for example, Your phone isn't here, so I'm sure you left it at your grandmother's. You have to use must. Okay, so helping them, present or past. What kind of word do we need? It's a modal. How do we use modal verbs? Yeah, and they produce the answer. Okay, your phone isn't here, so you must have left it at your grandmother's. How about 26? Think about it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good. How about number 3? Yeah. So you see, here we're testing phrasal verbs, verb patterns, and modal verbs, use of past modal verbs. So everything, anything in the same exercise. How can we help students here? You can personalize. Once they've done the exercise, you can personalize it and get them to use the structures, to make the structures their own. For example, here it says, we didn't see that film because of the bad reviews. And the sentence was, the bad reviews put us off seeing that film. So personalize it and say, okay, what puts you off seeing a film? What puts you off reading a book? What puts you off going to a restaurant? So once you've done it, get them to make the language their own and use the language to talk about their own personal lives. This is a quote by Michael Lewis. You know Michael Lewis, the linguist behind the lexical approach. And I think this is very, very useful for us teachers. It says the teacher's main responsibility is responsibility. These days, I am less concerned about achieving the language aims in my plan and more concerned about spotting and responding to opportunities, either prompted by a student's error or finding a collocation in a text to which I can add a handful of other useful collocates. Of course, he concentrates mainly on vocabulary because that was his area of expertise, but this applies to everything. Every time a student asks a question, every time they say, okay, what's the meaning of this or that? Help them by extending, okay, and what's the difference? And how else could you say that? And why not this or the other structure? Use their mistakes, use their questions, use their comments to extend, okay? To help them, to stretch them, to challenge them. And how else could you say that? What other words could you use instead of manage, for example, succeed? How would you use succeed? What preposition does it take, etc.? So, to cope with the demands of this use of English paper, our students need, first of all, to become very familiar with the different tasks. They need to know what they are expected to do for each one. They need to handle different structures. They need to have a wide range of vocabulary items at their disposal. They need to be made aware of collocations, okay? And taught how to record vocabulary. So not by resorting to the translation in Spanish, but record vocabulary in chunks, record vocabulary using sentences, using examples, their own examples, or synonyms, antonyms, okay? And as we said before, I can't stress enough how important it is for them to read both in class, but mainly outside the class, read extensively, listen to podcasts, listen to videos. The more, the better. The more exposure, the better prepared they will be. So that's our use of English paper. But then we said that use of English comes together with the reading paper, yeah? These skills, reading for main idea, reading for detail, they are skills they will have practiced at B1, okay? Skimming, reading for main idea, reading for gist, scanning, reading for details, because we said that at B1 they read, remember, factual texts. So they will be familiar with these two skills. However, now at B2, they have new challenges, and the challenges are coping with unfamiliar words, again, the same word coming up, understanding, attitude, opinion, tone, and text organization features. So that's the main difference between reading at B1, reading at B2. For instance, the three task types, they will be very familiar with this. They know, they have seen multiple choice exercises, gut text, and multiple matching. But now, of course, the level will be harder, the level will be higher, and the language will be more demanding. But for multiple choice, for instance, now they will have to not only answer questions about facts, like 34, for example, which is a question about facts, but look at question 33 and 36. Yeah. So why are the words uncanny knack used in line 37? What is meant by this had worked in her favor? So they need to read and they need to work out what these expressions mean. Okay, they're very unlikely to have seen the words uncanny knack before. So what skills, what tools do they have to work out the meaning of those expressions? And also text organization features. There will be questions about reference, for example. What does these refer to? What does she refer to? Okay. And they need to be able to find the referent for these pronouns in the text. Okay. This is the same test, the same task type. Of course, the text will be a little longer and the sentences they have to insert will be longer. But the focus of this exercise is text cohesion. So they will have to look at the text, the sentence they insert, looking for links before and after the sentence, words like, linking words, pronouns, okay, lexical cohesion, vocabulary. But this is the same, essentially the same task that they've done at B1. This one, the task they will be familiar with because they will have seen multiple matching, but at B1 is just descriptions of people. They have descriptions of children, of students, and they have to match the children to the students to different courses, for example, or different activities. Here, they read 4 different short texts, the same, they all talking about the same topic. So in this case, it was all about my favorite book. And then they have 10 questions to answer. First thing I always get my students to do is read the questions. So here first, read questions and underline key words. So for each question, for example, here, which writer says that their favorite book clearly benefit their own creative work? So I would get them to underline, so of course, eliciting them. But what do you think the most important words are? Okay. Benefited, creative work, for example. Or here, made them look at a particular academic subject in a new way. Academic subject, new way. So first, they underline key words in all the questions. And then they read text 1. That's the way I get my students to do this task. They read only text A. And what I ask them to do is, how many questions can they answer with the information from text A? Okay, so, and also, but as they find which questions they can answer, underline the bit of the text where the answer is given. Okay, so take a minute. I want you to read the text on text A. How many of these questions can you answer with the information in A? Okay, So I hope you will have realized that we can answer questions number 43, benefit their own creative work. And I would ask, okay, where is the evidence for that? Well, it says here, profound effect on my fiction writing. Question 47, encourage them to try reading books of the same genre. Why? Because it says, explore a few other sci-fi writers' work. Okay, this, of course, it all comes from our students. Where is the evidence? What words correspond to what words in the question corresponds to what words in the text? And 52 exceeded the expectations they had. Why? Because it says didn't really think I'd appreciate much. But I wouldn't stop here. I would say, okay, I would challenge them a little bit more. And I would say, okay, but why not 46? Why can't we answer question 46? Question 46 says, completely transformed their reading preferences. Why not? What bit of the text tells us 46 is not A? Yeah, it says, alongside my usual novel. So it wasn't a completely different preference. Okay, why not 50? 50 says, inspired them to start producing their own fiction. Why not? Well, because it says, which I was just beginning to get in. See, it's not a completely new interest. So this is what we need to do. We need to challenge them. We need to stretch them. We need to get them to think about their answers and account for their answers. On the Cambridge website, you will have these guides. There are three different, there is one for listening, there is one for reading, there is one for writing. And here you have a lot of information, very, very useful guides. You have exercises, okay, familiarization tasks, familiarization with the different parts of the reading paper, and information about how to assess paper. So check them out. They're really very, very useful. Listening. The listening paper looks very much the same, doesn't it? So the same number of parts, roughly the same number of questions. Of course, the level, needless to say, will be higher. Remember, we said that B for schools, first for schools, so B2, each part is worth 20% of the marks. Preliminary was 25 because there was no use of English paper. The length, okay, of course, a little bit longer now at first for schools. But the tasks will be very, very similar, except for one. So they will still have multiple choice questions. At B1, they have a multiple choice questions with pictures. Here, they won't have quick pictures. It was just words. But multiple choice, the task is the same. Sentence, gap fill. Okay, so a text with gaps to fill in, and a longer recording, an interview with multiple choice questions. So that's the same. What's different is part 5. Part 5 is new, and in my opinion, the most challenging part of the listening paper, because students listen to 5 extracts, and they all talk about the same topic. Okay, they all talk about sports. They all talking about trips. So there is the risk of word spotting. What do they mean? What do I mean by this? What they have to do is match the speaker to the topic, okay? And there are 3 distractors, 3 extra answers that they will not need to use, which makes it even harder. And word spotting is the main issue here. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means students hear a word in the recording, and they see the word in the answer, and they immediately think that's the right answer. And of course, it's not. Okay. So they need to listen carefully, and they need to listen out for clues, because without those clues, they will easily fall into the traps and they will easily be misled into choosing the wrong answers. Okay? Let's have a look, shall we? This is the task. You see, 5 speakers, 8 different answers. Again, I would get my students to underline keywords. Yeah. So for each answer, what the most important words are. You can, of course, when you do every exercise in listening as well, you anticipate the topic. This was about speaking in public. So do you like speaking in public? Have you ever spoken in public? What are the challenges of speaking in public? You can go through the questions, through the different answers, okay? Great, for example, grateful to have been given support. Why would the person be grateful? Who has given them support? Okay, activate knowledge, help them. And then they do the task. Okay, we'll do it, shall we? Remember that you need to write down keywords. I insist on this, and students complain sometimes, because of course that's not what they're going to be doing in the exam. They're not going to be writing down anything. They just have to choose the right answer. But this is training them to listen out for keywords. All right, let's go. So you will hear the recording twice.
Part 3. You will hear 5 short extracts in which teenagers are talking about their experience of speaking in public. For questions 19 to 23, choose from the list A to H what each speaker felt about the experience. Use the letters only once. There are 3 extra letters which you do not need to use. You now have 30 seconds to look at Part 3. Speaker 1.
In my geography class, we spent a week giving class presentations. Unfortunately, I hadn't checked what topics other people were doing as we were supposed to. Then, one of my classmates did virtually the same presentation I was going to do. I'd spent a long time preparing it and was very pleased I got it all done in time. Now, I had no choice but to talk about something else and felt a bit uncomfortable having to explain to my teacher what had happened. Some presentations were quite impressive. It motivated me to do my best, even though I did the second one without any preparation. Anyway, people were quite complimentary, which was something.
Speaker 2.
I was a member of the school debating society and we entered a competition against some other schools. When my turn came to speak, I know I must have sounded and looked very nervous, but it was the same for everyone, I guess. Anyway, I'm glad to say I got through it without slipping up or forgetting key facts. I really felt I could have done more thorough research, even though I spent ages on it. My sister had tried to be helpful because she'd done a similar project last year, so I couldn't really tell her I was managing okay without her. Anyway, the main thing was my school won the competition.
Speaker 3.
I gave a short speech in front of the whole school at our annual prize day. I'd expected to be nervous, and sure enough I was, despite all the encouragement from my class teacher. I didn't actually take any of the advice I was offered. I was too busy endlessly rehearsing in front of the mirror. I just thought that repeating it would pay off. Oh well, my pretty average performance was quickly forgotten as it turned out. Nobody commented on it at all, in fact, because one of the teachers made a brilliant speech straight after me, and that's all anyone talked about. And fair enough, it was very funny.
Speaker 4.
I was interviewed live on TV about playing football because I just won an award. I was given plenty of time to think carefully about what I was going to say and make some notes, but it still wasn't enough. The interviewer ran through the questions with me in advance. I just switched off though, so that wasn't helpful. I was just in a panic and wasn't able to calm down. It was a shame, and I was cross with myself because I've always wanted to be on TV. Friends and relatives were really nice afterwards, saying I came across well, but I didn't listen. I know it wasn't true.
Speaker 5.
We had a class discussion last week. I've got some very clever, confident classmates, and I felt I had to make a reasonable contribution. It wasn't a formal debate, so I tried talking without notes, but it was difficult to avoid getting things wrong doing that. It was only my class, so I shouldn't have felt nervous. I still did, though, when it came to it. And I found I didn't need all the research I'd done, but still thought it was an achievement to have covered as much as I did. Our teacher is usually very helpful, giving us notes and things. This time he left us to cope on our own, though.
Now you will hear part 3 again.
Okay, students will hear it twice. We're not going to have time to hear it twice. But you see how difficult it is, how challenging it is, how confusing it might be. So what are the answers and why? Okay, so speaker 1, the answer is, you can write down, you can write your answers in the chat if you want to, we just go through them. Okay, speaker 1 is E, embarrassed at having to change plans. So
Part 3. You will hear 5 short extracts in which teenagers are talking about...
Okay, speaker 1, E, she says that she found out somebody was going to talk about the same topic. Speaker 2, D. Okay, relieved. He didn't slip up, he says. Right, I was happy or something. I didn't slip up. Speaker 3, surprised that practicing didn't help much. She says, oh, well, okay, I just thought rehearsing in front of the mirror would help. Oh, well, okay, which means it didn't. Speaker 4, disappointed. Okay, I was cross with myself, he says. Speaker 5, B. Okay, proud. He had done lots of research. It wasn't helpful, but she was proud. It was an achievement, she says. Again, you see how, for example, there is one, speaker 4, speaker 3, this one, who mentions somebody else's talk. Okay, she mentions that somebody else's talk was much better, but she doesn't say she's annoyed. She says, well, fair enough, it was interesting. So you see, there are very little clues they need to listen out for to make sure they do the task well. Challenging, isn't it? So, as we said before, familiarization with the task is paramount, so they need to be very familiar with what they are supposed to do. They need to be able to predict what kind of answers they're going to hear. For example, in the one about gap fill, what kind of answers do we need? Do I need a date? Do I need a place? Do I need a noun, a number? Activating previous knowledge, like we said before, talking about what they already know about the topic, thinking about the topic, anticipating vocabulary, and as we said before, paying attention to keywords. Okay. Writing. So we will speak a little bit more now about writing. We know that now there is a big change. There are many more writing tasks at B1, 2 parts to the writing paper, a compulsory task, which is always an essay, and part 2, which is a choice. They have a choice of tasks. They are given the instructions, the rubric here, where it says how many words they have to write, so between 140 and 190 words. They are given a context, okay? With your teacher, you've been talking about such and such a topic. The prompt, okay? we will see that then that there are some slight differences between the prompts they might get, but this is the prompt. And then notes that they must include, so they must talk about, so in this case it was teaching children at home or sending them to school. So they have to talk about having a parent as teacher, they have to talk about making friends, and they must include a third idea, which has to be different from the other two ideas. Okay, so for instance, here it would be, I don't know, school trips, something which is completely different from the other two activities, from the other two ideas. The essay prompts may vary slightly. Sometimes they always have a statement, okay? Sometimes they have the statement and then do you agree, for example? Sometimes they have a what do you think, okay? Do you think, and then the situation, do you think that, or a statement, and then what do you think? Sometimes they just have a question. What is the best way for you to spend your free time? Anyway, the organization of the essay will always be the same. They will need to write 5 paragraphs. The first paragraph will be an introduction where they will rephrase, reword the prompt. So here is what's the best way for you to spend your free time. So they have to introduce the topic. They need to know that essays are discursive pieces. In an essay, you discuss ideas. So it's not going to be about their friend, their story, how they met their friend, how they spend their free time. It's going to be about different ways in general, okay? Best ways to spend your free time. So, for instance, here you could say, okay, they can say something like teenagers spend most of their time at school these days. So it's very important that they should spend their free time in the best way possible. Okay? Personally, because there is a question, okay? What is the best way for you to spend your free time? I always tell my students to answer that question in the introduction. So after they've reworded the prompt, they answer the question. So in my opinion, the best way to spend my free time is by doing sports. And then they start discussing the ideas they are given. So the first idea in the second paragraph, the second idea in the third paragraph, then their own idea, and then the conclusion when they're going to wrap up their essay and go back to what they said at the beginning, okay? Restate their opinion, give reasons in the conclusion. What makes a good essay? Content, of course, ideas. So they need ideas, main ideas, supporting ideas. They need to develop their ideas. Organization, they need to be able to organize their essay into clear, neat paragraphs. Introduction, first idea, second idea, their idea, conclusion, with nice linking words, each paragraph having a topic sentence which they are going to support. And of course, they need language, okay, a variety of structures. Remember, we said at the beginning that at this level, they need to write detailed and readable English and give reasons for their opinions. So that's part 1, that's the essay. The second task is a situationally based writing task. They're always given a prompt. It's not just write any article, write any story. They're given a prompt in about 70 words, which gives them the information they have to include. The choice of tasks, they have 3 tasks and they have to choose one. Article, which is a new task. Letter or email. Now, if they are not doing first certificate for schools, they're more likely to have to write formal letters, like letters of complaint, letter of application, letters of request. Story or report, this varies. If they are doing first for schools, they will have a story. If they are doing standard first, they will have a report and then a review. So what do we need here? They need to be very familiar with the different types of writing, okay? It's very important that you expose them to good sample answers. You draw their attention to what information to include in each paragraph. How many paragraphs do we have in an article? How do we start a formal letter? How do we finish a formal letter? What information do we include in the first paragraph, okay? How many paragraphs? Register, formal, informal. Remember, we also said that now they will have to be able to tell between formal and informal writing, the difference between register. And useful language. What useful language can they use in reviews? I would recommend you did this or that, okay? What tenses do we use in stories? What language, what linking words do we use in letters? All that we need to work on. Assessment. When examiners assess our students' writing, they look at 4 criteria: content, communicative achievement, which means ideas, organization, and language. Content means making sure that what they are told to do, they have done. So the content is relevant, they stick to the task, they have included all the information they've been asked to include. If it's the essay, the 2 ideas, the third idea. If it's part 2, the information they are given in the prompt. And the target is informed, so nothing has been left out. Communicative achievement, this has to do with ideas they communicate, simple or complex ideas, and being able to hold the attention of the reader. Will the reader want to read my article, my report? How easy will it be to read? Am I following the conventions of letter writing, of story writing, of how to write a review? Organization, that has to do with, of course, paragraphing, linking words, coherent ideas, one idea following nicely for the idea I've written before, using a variety of cohesive devices, okay? Not only linking words, but also maybe lexical cohesion, reference, okay? And language, at this level, remember, they need a much better command of the language, so a range of accurate language, vocabulary, simple and complex structures, and there will be errors, of course, but these errors shouldn't interfere with communication. What examiners look at is this. These are the assessment scales. So there are 5 bands, and our standard, our average first certificate student, is a band 3. Okay, so this is our average FCE student. Below that, it's B1. Okay, above that is closer to C1, to advanced. So this is our average student. Of course, we want them to perform to the best of their ability. But when we correct compositions, we start by looking at content. Okay, so we check. Have they included everything? Are there any relevancies? Have they left anything out? Would the target reader be fully informed? If all these requirements are met, then they get a band 3. If something is not there, then we go down to maybe 2, 2.5 if they're closer to a band 3, 1 if there are lots of irrelevancies, and also up, okay, to band 5, band 4, depending on how many of the descriptors in each band we find in the piece of writing. And the same for communicative achievement, organization, language, yeah? So that's the way we do it. We go from content, and then we read the writing again, and then we say, okay, are they using the conventions, the conventions of the writing task? How about organization? And then we go up or down, starting always at band 3. On the website, you've got these Write and Improve page, which is very, very useful. Students write here. They can write. They're given a task, they write, and then they're given feedback. And their progress is recorded. They can time how long it takes them to write, because that's another issue, okay? They need to be able to write in the allotted time. They cannot spend 1 hour on each piece of writing. So, final and general tips. My advice, do not concentrate unduly on exam practice. And what do I mean by this? Of course, exam practice is important all the time, but the idea is to exploit exam practice, not get them to do 50 practice tests. Doing a lot of practice tests does not guarantee that they will pass the exam, especially if they are not working on why the answer is incorrect, why they got it wrong, what they did not see, what should they have paid attention to and they didn't. Okay, so not doing a lot of exam practice, but doing it thoroughly, okay, going over it, doing it together, going over the answers together. Stretch your students all the time, like we said before, push them. How else? What else? What other words? Focus on error correction and use their mistakes, as we said before, for responsibility. And get them to read. The more, the better. Remember, no language, no vocabulary lists, no structures now. So the more they read, the more language, the better. Take them out of the course book. Now all the course books are based on real life people, real life situations. So get them to read more, get them to find out more about whatever they are reading in the textbook. Get them to watch videos on YouTube about the person they've read about in the course book. This is the Cambridge official preparation material. I am using Prepare with my students, and it's a very nice book. I highly recommend it. There are 2 levels per, for example, for B2, there are 2 levels. It's 5 and 6. 5 is like the first certificate, and 6 is the exam level. Teachers' resources available here on the Cambridge website. Okay, handbook for teachers, all the exam specifications, past papers, teaching tips. These are the guides that I told you about. So reading, writing, listening, writing checklist. So this helps you for getting students to check once they've written, have I done everything? Have I included all the points? Yeah. And that's about it from me. So I should stop sharing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vero. We have 1 or 2 questions. One of the first questions is from Miriam, who would like to know, can they underline the keywords in the test? That has to do, I imagine, with reading. Yes.
Yes, if they are doing paper-based, of course they can, because they will have a piece of paper. If they are doing computer-based, there is a little tool or a feature, something that you can do on the website. Marian maybe will probably help you a bit more, and they can have, they can underline bits.
For digital exams, they can highlight the text. So yes, they can.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then anything else would you like to add to that?
No, it's just the computer-based, in the paper-based, if they're doing paper-based exams, of course they can write, they can highlight, they can write on their piece of paper. Nobody reads what they write there, because then they have to transfer answers to the answer sheet, but they can highlight and they can circle, they can do whatever they want on the piece of paper. And digital exams, as Maru just said, they can also have this little tool and they can highlight bits. Yeah, in the question, in the answers.
No, yes, on the question paper, not on the answer sheet. That's what.
No, the answer sheet is just letters, or it's just A, B, C, D, or if it's word formation or keyword transformations, just writing the words. But there is nothing. The texts are not on the answer sheet.
We have another question from Marcela. Is it always an opinion essay, the one they have to write?
Essays are by definition opinion pieces. An essay is an opinion piece. So they always have to discuss opinions. It's not an article is their experience. An article is based on something that they did. A review is based on their experience. So of course they draw from their experience, but essays are by definition opinion pieces. They discuss abstract ideas. What's the best way? Why do you think people like to be famous? What do you think? Why do you think it's important to play sports? So not why I play sports. But people play sports because, okay, people, I don't know, enjoy this because in general, they can draw from, they do draw from their own experience, and they can include examples if they want, but it's not a story. It's not what they do. It's not an article. Okay, that's why they shouldn't make it very conversational. An essay is an opinion piece, an academic piece of writing. It shouldn't be conversational. There shouldn't be contractions. There shouldn't be many yous. There shouldn't be questions. There shouldn't be a conversational style addressing the reader. That's for reports. Okay, when you ask, okay, have you ever done this? I did this, I did that when I was a child. Not in essays. Essays, opinion.
Thank you. And then, well, Majo has shared something that happens to her with her students. And I think this is something that probably happens to lots of teachers. At the beginning, students may find writing essays quite challenging because at school, they are not used to practicing this piece of writing in Spanish.
Well, I would start by exposing them to, it's true. I would start by exposing them to sample texts, okay? Start by exposing them to sample answers, analyzing sample answers. What do you see? How has this student tackled the prompt? What information has he included in the introduction? What language? Get them to, at the beginning, I tell them to underline nice expressions they see in sampled answers and use them. I let them copy, not the content, but those words, those sentence beginners, okay? And they've got like crutches that they can use at the beginning. And little by little, they can let go of that help and they can produce their own essays a lot more confidently. But I start actually by looking at samples, analyzing samples, working on linking words. It's very, very important that they should know that they have to use a variety of linking words, not also all the time. So give them keywords they can use. You can give them sample answers which are jumbled, okay, and they have to put the paragraphs in the right order. You can give them essays with blanks and they put in the linking words. So build it up to it. No, don't from one day to the other without having had any preparation, get them to write essays, because of course they will not know how to.
Thank you, Vero. Sorry, but we are running short of time and we have some more questions. One of the questions is from Marcela, and she says, the problem I usually have when correcting writing is if I am really marking it well. I think that I will answer this shortly and briefly, and just to mention that probably we will be offering another session only on writing and how to assess writing, because this is really quite challenging for teachers who have no experience. I don't know if you agree with me on that.
Yes, and remember that we as teachers usually overcorrect language and we only focus on language use. And as I showed you, it's not only language, it's content, it's communication of ideas, it's organization. So all the mark they get is made up by all those features, not only language. So yes.
Sorry, another question about the paper-based exams, whether they have to use a pencil or a pen in the writing paper.
While in the other use of English, what they do on the question paper doesn't matter.
Yeah, the writing.
Sorry. The writing they have to write in pen.
In pen. Okay. And another one is about whether they can use caps and no distinctions between capital letters. What, when they use the block capital letters, they write.
For the digital exams, you mean?
No, in writing.
They can write in longhand or they can write in block letters. No, when they're writing, no, they can write, they can choose. No.
Okay, well, we will answer the other questions. Now we will have a short coffee break so that you can have some mate coffee, and in about 5 or 10 minutes, we will be back. Okay, thank you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Vero?
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're enjoying today's webinar for teachers, and that you've had time to prepare a cup of coffee or some mate or some tereré for all those people from Misiones that have joined us this morning. I would like to get started now, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that Gabriela Pellegrini can share her screen, and she will start telling us about the speaking component. So, Gabby, can you start?
Here I am. Sorry, I just need to check.
Don't worry.
If I have sound. Yes, there it is.
You need to share, yes.
There we are.
There we are, lovely. No, you need to go to,
yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so Gavi, now it's your turn, and we are all ears. We are very interested in learning a little bit more on the speaking component.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being there. We are now going to concentrate on the speaking part of the exam. So we're going to start with an overview. This will be the overview. We're going to have a look at the exam in general. Then we're going to concentrate on each part of the test. I will try to give you some practical tips for each part of the test. Then we'll have a look at the assessment criteria. We will be watching 1 or 2 videos, and I will be asking you to mark students using the assessment criteria. And then we will listen to your questions, right? Okay, so let's begin. What level is the exam? As Beto said before, B2 first for schools is targeted at level B2 on the CEFR. B2 first for schools is aimed at learners who need to show that they can start working in an English-speaking environment and study at an upper intermediate level. Now, what can candidates actually do at B2 level? As an overall general ability, they can follow, sorry. I was trying to move the box. A talk on a familiar topic. They can keep up a conversation on a range of topics. As regards to social and tourist abilities, they can ask for clarification and further information, and he's likely to understand the answer. They can keep up a conversation on a fairly wide range of topics. As regards work, they can ask for factual information and understand the answer, and they can express their own opinion and express arguments to a limited extent. As regards study areas, they can answer predictable or factual questions, and they can check that all instructions are understood. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the test format. As you can see in the picture, there are 2 candidates and there are 2 assessors, 2 examiners, I mean. The one who will be doing the talking is called the interlocutor, all right? As you can see, she has like a little leaflet there. She will be reading. She has written instructions. She has a script, okay? And the one sitting at the back is the assessor. She's the one that will be marking the students in detail. The interlocutor, as we'll see later on, will also be marking the students, but she will be giving them an overall mark. As you can see in this photograph, there are 2 candidates, but sometimes there might be 3. That will happen in an even group. Suppose in a center we have 15 students, we will have pairs and probably 1 group of 3. Okay, so if you can practice, give them some practice, or watch at least some interviews where there are 3 students so that they don't get scared if they happen to do the exam in a group of 3. Also remind your students that the interlocutor is not allowed to give the students any feedback, any positive or negative feedback, because otherwise they might get the idea that they've done wonderfully well in the exam, and they might leave the room thinking, well, it was fantastic, the examiner didn't tell me anything. Well, she's not allowed to give them any feedback, right? Okay. All right, now let's concentrate on the exam. The exam has 4 parts. It lasts 14 minutes for pairs, 20 minutes in groups of 3. The first part, which lasts around 1 minute, lasts around 2 minutes and 3 minutes for groups of 3, is a conversation. I call it the warm-up. We're going to discuss each of these parts in detail in a minute, yes? So I'll go over this quite quickly. It's a conversation between the interlocutor, who will be asking questions, and each candidate. The focus is on general interactional and social language. Part 2 is a 1 minute long turn for each candidate, plus a 30-second response from the second candidate. The total time for part 2 is 4 minutes, 6 minutes in a group of 3. An individual long turn for each candidate with a response from the second candidate. In turn, the candidates are given a pair of photographs to talk about. The focus is on organizing a larger unit of discourse, comparing, describing, and expressing opinions. Part 3 is a 2-minute discussion followed by a 1-minute decision-making task. The total time for part 3 is 4 minutes, or 5 minutes for a group of 3. What type of interaction is it? It's a 2-way conversation between the candidates. The candidates are given spoken instructions with written stimuli. Yes, you're going to see their drawings, their prompts, which are used in discussion and decision-making tasks. The focus is on sustaining an interaction, exchanging ideas, expressing and justifying opinions, agreeing, disagreeing, suggesting, speculating, evaluating, reaching a decision through negotiation, etc. And the last part lasts 4 minutes, 6 minutes in groups of 3. It's a discussion of topics related to the collaborative task. These are spoken questions, yes? The focus is on expressing and justifying opinions, agreeing, disagreeing, speculating. You will notice that the focus in general in the second part will be on discourse management. We're going to see this later on how students organize their speech. And the third part, the focus will be on interactive communication. Yes? Okay. So let's talk about part 1, which is called the interview. I personally call it the warm-up, all right? I think that this part gives the students the possibility of relaxing. They're very, very nervous at the beginning. So they will be talking about, familiar things that have to do with their everyday life, all right? So it's a conversation with the examiner. The examiner asks questions and students give information about themselves. They talk about past experiences, present circumstances, and future plans. Now, in order to be able to do this, they need certain skills, all right? They need to be able to talk about a range of familiar topics, understanding a range of questions and answering them, using appropriate language to expand on responses, giving personal information, expressing opinions, talking about present circumstances, past experiences, and future plans. Okay, this is the script, okay? This is what the interlocutor has. The students will not see this, obviously, all right? We're going to read just a little part. It will start with an introduction. They will introduce themselves. Good morning. My name is Gabriela. Pellegrini, this is my colleague. So she will be introducing the assessor. And your names are, so they will have to say their names. Thank you. Where do you live? And you. First, we'd like to know something about you. So the interlocutor will be asking them some questions. In this case, they are about people you know, things you like, places you go to. Okay? So, for example, it says, who are you most like in your family? Tell us about him or her. Do you have a best friend? What do you like about him or her? Yes, in brackets. Now, in this part of the test, they are expected to answer questions, okay? They can answer, of course, with a short answer, like, do you have a best friend? Yes, I do, but they have to expand on that. They are expected to continue talking, okay? So if students don't expand on their answer, then the examiner will ask them a question using this prompt, yes? What do you like about him or about her? Who do you spend time with after school? All right, suppose I say, well, I spend time with my friends, with my school friends. Well, what do you do together? Okay, so first thing, tell your students to, encourage your students to expand on their answers. All right, they cannot just say, yes, I do, or no, I don't. Okay, they have to explain, or they have to give examples in some cases. All right, in order to perform, to fulfill the functions and the abilities and skills that we mentioned before, they need to be familiar with the language associated with those skills. So they have to be familiar with vocabulary related to personal life, family and friends, home, free time, hobbies, sports, entertainment, holidays, school. This is a type of language that appears in all B2 course books. All right, so they, at this level, they will probably be familiarized with this type of vocabulary. Then they will have to handle past, present, and future tenses, because they might be asked questions about the past, there's what they did last weekend, for example, about the present, or they might have to talk about their plans for the future. So that means that they will need to master those tenses, all right? This applies, this last item goes for the whole exam. If they need to ask for clarification, they should be familiarized with the language associated with that. So I just included an example from Exam Booster, one of our Cambridge B2 books, which is a matching exercise where they have to match the beginning of the utterance of the sentence and the second part. Okay, so this is a way of practicing this, but let them know, yes, tell your students that if they are not sure about something, or if they're not sure they've understood, they have to ask for clarification, okay? Let's move on. More useful language for this part. Well, time fillers. Time fillers are important for the whole exam. Yes, not only this part, but I've included them here. What are time fillers? These are these little words or expressions that we use when we are thinking and we don't know what to say. All right, so instead of saying as we would do in Spanish, or yes, they should use words like well, to be honest, I mean, you know, like, you see, right. Okay, so these words give them some time to think, okay? Now, they will be asked questions about hobbies and likes, most probably, so they have to master, they have to be able to handle verbs of likes and dislikes. Not only verbs, but also expressions like I'm fond of, I'm keen on, I'm into, yes, I'm into football, for example. And please tell them to be very careful with answers like, yes, I like. Do you like going out with your friends after school? Yes, I like. That is wrong, all right? But students very often do it. So, yes, I do. Yes, I love it. Or, yes, but not, yes, I like. Then this is the same mistake, yes? Do you enjoy watching sports on TV? Yes, I enjoy because. All right, so verbs of likes and dislikes are very important. So make sure that they know how to use them appropriately. Remember that they always require a direct object. You need to mention what you like or what you enjoy, all right? And then that the direct object comes immediately after the verb. So I like it, I like them, I like football very much. That very much at the end, please. I'm mentioning this because these are very common mistakes that appear in the oral exam, in the speaking part. Also, I also encourage my students to start using expressions like the word shall, when they want to, for example, say, shall I come in? Yes, suppose they are asked to go into the room, and very often in Spanish, they would say something like, entro, paso, no, in English, and then they say in English, I come in, I start. Well, in English, we have language for that, of course, and that is shall, yes? Shall I start? Shall I come in? Shall we come in? So use them in class also. Yes, very often in class, at school. Suppose we are reading and I ask somebody to start reading and she says, I start. Sorry, shall I start? Yes. Okay, and they should try to use discourse markers to give details and to give reasons. So whenever they answer a question, then, well, in fact, yes, and they continue talking, but they should link their answer with discourse markers. Again, this is an exercise taken from, I think it was Exam Booster, where they have to put phrases in the correct column. And these are things like another thing is that, as well as that, apart from that, as, because, as. Yes, so they have to put them in these two columns, giving reasons or adding reasons. Okay, how can they practice this? Well, you can practice in the class. You can make them talk about their own lives, or they can play roles. All right, students love role playing. So you can give them cards, and yes, they can play. They can do role play in class. Okay, let's move on. Now, we are going to concentrate on the speaking part 2, the long term. Why is it called the long term? Because students are expected to talk for 1 minute, okay? Students sometimes find this part very, very challenging, very daunting. Yes, they are afraid of it. They say, sometimes say, what if the examiner cuts me short? Yes. Or what if I don't manage to fill the minute with whatever I have to say? All right, they need to practice this. Yes, they need to time themselves. So every once in a while, you can practice with them, but you have to time them. They have to be timed, okay? This is practice mostly. So in this part of the test, tests the candidate's ability to produce an extended piece of discourse. The focus is on the candidate's ability to speak individually for an extended period of time, for 1 minute. Candidates compare and contrast 2 photographs, then answer a further question about the other candidate's photographs. So, in B2, they had to describe 1 picture. Okay, so they would say things like, in this picture, I can see, right? In B2, they are supposed to compare and contrast 2 pictures. They don't have time to describe each detail in each photograph, in detail. Okay, now we're going to see how to go about that. Candidates have the opportunity to show their ability to organize their thoughts and ideas and express themselves coherently with appropriate language. So, tell them not to worry if they are cut short, okay? The interlocutor will stop the candidate when they get to the minute. So there's no problem, nothing happens, provided they have answered the question that they are asked. We're going to look at the task in a minute, okay? And they've done the comparing and contrasting, of course. What they shouldn't do is to stop before the allotted time is over, all right? If the examiner doesn't stop them, it means that they still have time. So they have to continue talking, okay? All right, let's move on and let's have a look at the task. Okay, here you see 2 photographs and you have a question. What you see on the right is what the students will get, okay? And what you see on the left is the script, yes, the interlocutor script. So it says, in this part of the test, I'm going to give each of you 2 photographs. I would like you to talk about your photograph on your own for about a minute, and also to answer a question about your partner's photographs. They show students learning in different ways. So the examiner will give the students, the candidate, his or her photographs, and she says, they show students learning in different ways. I would like you to compare the photographs and say what might be good for the students about learning in these ways. Okay? Now, all this is very important. Why? Because what she said before, they show students learning in different ways, is the similarity. Okay? So the interlocutor is mentioning the similarity when she's handing over the photographs to the students. And what she says second, what might be good for the students about learning in these ways is the question that they will have to answer after comparing and contrasting. Okay? Once the candidate, in this case, candidate A, finishes discussing the questions, candidate B will have to answer a question on those photographs. So in this case, it says, well, candidate B, do you prefer learning things on your own or with friends? Why? And she has 30 seconds to answer this question. So she has to answer, she has to expand, but not as much as when shown the photographs. Okay? Now, how do I advise my students to go over this task? I find it very useful if they do the task answering the questions who, what, where, when, and how, but regarding both questions. So in that case, they will avoid falling into the trap of describing in detail, okay? So who? So you talk about both pictures answering this question, all right? So they start with a similarity. Both pictures show students learning in different ways, or students learning, yes? However, they are learning in different ways. In the first picture, there is a group of young people, all right? Whereas in the second picture, there is a group of children. In the first picture, I think that they are, or it seems to me that they are in an office or in a living room or whatever it is. Whereas in the second picture, I think that they are at a school because they're wearing a uniform and using computers, yes? So I'm answering who, what, where. And then when you have to talk about the how are they feeling or why, you start speculating, okay? Because we don't know how they're feeling or why they're doing this. So language of speculation comes into the picture. We're going to concentrate on that in a minute. So start with a similarity. They should start with a similarity, and from there talking about the who regarding both pictures, the where, the what are they doing, and then how and why, okay? I think that this, as I said before, allows them to organize their ideas, and they will concentrate on both pictures at the same time not devoting more time to one or to the other, because what might happen is that if they start describing the pictures, they might only describe one and then they don't have time for the other one. Besides, they are not asked to describe, they are asked to compare and contrast, right? Okay. What language is useful for this task? Well, all language related to speculation. Yes? Making deductions. So they should use words like maybe, perhaps. They should use how to use the words, the verbs, sorry, seem and look. It seems to me that, they seem to be, it looks as if, he looks tired, whatever. Modals of certainty and uncertainty. This is very important. Yes. I've brought in an exercise taken from the Complete First for Schools from the Speaking Bank. It's also a matching exercise where they have to match the first part to the second part. But if we have a look at the first part, it says it looks as, they are probably, they seem to, they look, well, this is, I think, they must enjoy. So this means I'm sure they enjoy. Maybe they, I guess. Okay. So they have to use language of speculation, which is not used in B1. Okay. Which is more factual. Okay. More useful language, ways of expressing similarities and differences. One similarity is that in this picture there's this, whereas in the other one there's this. Comparatives and linking words to produce a more extended and coherent sample of speech. Yes. Well, in this one, in this picture, the girls are not as happy as in the other one. All right. So they should know how to use comparatives as well. This is an exercise taken from Exam Booster, where they have to put these expressions in the blanks, both in contrast, in the same way, the main similarity, the most obvious difference, nearly as nice as, whereas, while. So these are very useful, yes, when you are contrasting one picture to another. Okay, I brought in an example. So this is something that you must do with your students, all right? You must show them an example in the same way as Vero said that they have to have a look at model answers. Show them an example, underline discourse markers, all right? And the language that they are expected to use in this type of task. It says in this part of the test, I'm going to give each of you 2 photographs. I'd like you to talk about your photograph on your own for a minute. Here are your photographs. They show people on holiday. That's the similarity. I'd like you to compare the photographs and say why you think the people chose these holidays. So both pictures, so we start with a similarity, okay? Both pictures show people on holiday, but they are different kinds of holidays. The people in the first photo are in the countryside, whereas the second photo shows a big city. So there we are comparing the where, okay? It looks as if, language of speculation, the people in the first photo are on a walking holiday because they've got backpacks on a map. But on the other hand, the other people are probably doing some sightseeing. They seem to be up in a tower and they're taking a selfie. Another difference is that people in the city look happy and relaxed. So this is how, yes, how do they feel? Whereas the people in the countryside look worried. I think they might be lost. Okay, she's making a deduction there. And now she's answering the question. Yes, maybe they chose this holiday because they enjoy being in the countryside. I think the people in the second photo enjoy city life. So I guess they probably chose to visit the city because there are lots of interesting things to do. So they have to make sure that they answer the question. Okay. So practice this. The only way of getting it right is through practice. Yes. Organizing it. Okay, first I'm going to start comparing and contrasting, then I'll answer the question. Okay, or I'll answer the question and then I'll compare and contrast. They have to practice and find the best way for each of them, okay? Careful when they describe the pictures, because sometimes they tend to use some of the language that they used in B1. So they say, in the first photo, and then they say shows. No, the first photo shows, all right? Or in the first photo, there is a couple, okay? Careful with that. That's a very, very common mistake. Okay, let's move on to part 3, the collaborative task. Why collaborative? Because they will do something together. So this is the first time when they are going to interact. Both candidates are going to interact, okay? It takes around 4 minutes, 5 minutes in groups of 3s. The task consists of a discussion question with 5 written prompts designed to provide ideas. Candidates are not expected to discuss all 5 prompts in the time available, but should continue their discussion until asked to stop. So again, going back to the previous task, they have to continue talking until they are stopped. So what happens if they finish discussing all the 5 different prompts? Yes, they talked about all of them. Well, they go back to another one and they add more ideas, okay? They continue talking about it until the examiner says, thank you very much, okay? They are then asked to briefly summarize their discussion and come to a decision. This will be a second instance. So first, the examiner will give them 2 minutes to discuss the different prompts, and then she's going to give them 1 minute, 1 more minute to summarize and make a decision. They are assessed on their ability to hold a conversation, take in turns appropriately, and using the language of negotiation and collaboration. The task is opinion-based, and there is no right or wrong answer, okay? Tell them not to worry, because there are no wrong answers here, in the sense that, well, that is not what you were supposed to say, okay? The task gives candidates the opportunity to show their range of language and their ability to invite the opinions and ideas of their partner and respond appropriately. Okay, let's have a look at the task. Okay, again, what you have on the left is the interlocutor script, and what you see on the right is what the students are going to get. It's like a little poster, okay? So the interlocutor says, now I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes in a group of 3. Here are some reasons why many students go on school trips, and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task. So she gives them 15 seconds, yes, to look at the prompts. Now, talk to each other about whether it's a good idea for students to go on school trips. Okay, so they have 2 minutes to discuss these prompts. Okay. I always tell my students that this is a conversation. It's a conversation between 2 peers, a conversation between 2 friends or 2 classmates, okay? So what they should do first is face one another. I think this is a good tip. Yes, I tell them to turn slightly, face the other candidate, so that they forget about the interlocutor. Yes, they forget that the interlocutor is there, and they stop looking at the interlocutor all the time, like seeking confirmation, yes, or reassurance. So first they turn a little bit, they look at one another, and they start talking. Yes, they start discussing, they start talking about these options. Now, what happens if a student is very shy? Well, the other student, the other candidate, will have to develop tools, or will have to have tools in order to draw the other candidate out. So she will probably take a more active role, and she will ask the other one questions, yes? Like, do you think that, well, the question was, is it a good idea for students to go on school trips? Do you think that going on school trips is a good idea? I feel that learning, it allows us to learn about the world, for example, yes? What do you think? So she will have to ask the other candidate for her opinion or his opinion, okay? If the other candidate doesn't initiate the conversation, she will have to, or he will have to start talking again and initiate the dialogue again, okay? But the idea is for the conversation to be balanced, okay? One student should not be doing the initiating all the time, because if not, the other student will only respond, okay? So sometimes the discussion should be started by candidate A, sometimes by candidate B, okay? That's the ideal situation. It should be balanced. Sometimes it might happen that somebody is over anxious to show how much she knows, and she might hold the ground and not allow the other candidate to give her opinion. She will have to interrupt him, as you would do in a normal conversation, and say, yes, you're right. I agree. I agree with you up to a point, but, and then she gives her opinion, okay? So all this needs practicing, okay? Now, the examiner will say, thank you. Now you have about a minute to decide which two things are the most important for teachers to think about when they organize school trips for their students. So on a second instance, they will have to choose, okay? They will have to agree on this. They will have to negotiate the decision, and they clearly state which options they have chosen. So let's have a look at the language that will help them to do this, to perform the task successfully. The speaking skills assessed here are exchanging ideas, expressing and justifying opinions, comparing, agreeing and disagreeing, speculating, suggesting, reaching a decision. Okay? Now, I've taken some exercises from First Trainer, where students make suggestions. Well, in this case, the ones above, they have to say whether the little boxes show expressions to make suggestions or agreeing to those suggestions or disagreeing or reaching an agreement, okay? So how about, why don't we, perhaps we should, what do you think? So shall we? Yes, they have to be familiarized with language related to suggestions, with agreeing and disagreeing as well. Don't you think so? Would you agree? Wouldn't you say so? Agree. Right. I think so too. That's true. I completely agree with you. That's a great idea. Careful with I think so. Okay. Very often they say, I think yes, I think no. All right. So you have to practice this. I don't think so. Okay. So work on these things that they will probably have to use in the exam. I'm not really sure about that. I think it might be better I'd rather we did something else. Okay. Then there is another type of exercise here where they have to choose the right answer. And I included it because I like number one. All right. The verb agree. Agree is a very important word because they tend to think that it is an adjective. So they tend to say things like, I'm agree. And no, yes, it's I agree, or I don't agree, I disagree, I agree with you. Okay, so careful with that as well. Then here we have some, it says, which two expressions can you use to encourage your partner to reach an agreement? I would suggest either the swimming pool or the evening entertainment. Are you okay with that? My choice would be the reduced prices. What do you think? So shall we, the shall, remember the shall I mentioned in the first part, shall we choose the evening entertainment? Yes, let's go for that. Okay, and the last box, you can't see it very clearly, is related to that as well. Okay, then, shall we make our final decision? So we both agree on this. I think that's it then. Are we agreed? Okay, So all language related to reaching a decision. Okay. Let's move on to part 4, which is called the discussion. In this part of the test, the examiner will direct the interaction by asking questions which encourage the candidates to discuss the topics introduced in part 3 further. So that is to say, if in part 3 we talked about school trips, in part 4 we're probably going to talk about school trips, okay? The questions differ from part 1 in that they ask primarily for an evaluation or opinion rather than for information, okay? So for, part 1 was more about personal information. This has to do with evaluating and giving an opinion, right? This part of the test gives candidates an opportunity to show that they are capable of discussing issues in more depth. The examiner will ask questions individually, but they may also bring their partner into the discussion after a candidate has answered a question. The examiner may also ask one candidate to reply to his or her partner's opinion. So tell them that the examiner might ask them a question about what the other candidate has said. So they must pay attention. Okay, they must be paying attention at all times. Maybe the examiner doesn't ask him a question, but she might direct the conversation, yes, with her hands, yes, showing the candidate that she would like to hear her opinion. So they shouldn't be surprised if that happens. Again, this is the actual exam. Do you think school trips should take place on school day, on a school day, or at the weekend? Why, in brackets? Yes. Notice that most of these questions, many of these questions give us a choice. Yes, this or that. So be careful not to only answer the question and say, well, I think that school trips should take place on school day. And that's that. No, they should always elaborate. They should always expand, okay? The same as in the first part, but in this case, it would be related to other topics. So that's why the interlocutor gets the why in brackets, just in case the student doesn't expand, okay, on her answer. If you go on a school trip, is it better to visit a city or go to the countryside? Again, why, okay? And notice there is a little box over there where it says select any of the following prompts as appropriate. What do you think? So this is to ask the other candidate the same question. What do you think? Notice she doesn't mention all the question again. Do you agree? And you? Okay. Now, I just included a little exercise that students can do, taken from Exam Booster, where they have to put the phrases in the right column. Yes, giving an opinion, clarifying an opinion. As far as I'm concerned, in my experience, let me explain personally, I'd say, so all language that you can use to give your opinion, okay, or to clarify your opinion. All right, that was quite a lot, wasn't it? Let's concentrate now, I don't know how we are doing regarding time, on the assessment criteria. Why is knowing or being familiarized with the assessment criteria important? It will allow us to analyze the school's strengths, the students' strengths and weaknesses. And it will give us an impression, let us form an impression of how ready our students are to sit for the exam, to do the exam, okay? The assessor will be using an analytical scale, which is even longer, broader than this one, all right? The interlocutor will be giving them a global achievement scale. Remember, the interlocutor is the one that is doing the talking. So she will be only be giving them 1 mark, 1 overall mark, okay? The assessor will be looking at this chart all the time, all right? Notice that there are different bands, the same as with writing. 5 In this case, we don't have 4 because 4 shares some features with 5 and with 3. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay? And the areas in which they are going to be tested are grammar and vocabulary throughout the whole exam, discourse management throughout the whole exam, but primarily on part 2, pronunciation throughout the whole exam, and interactive communication in mainly in part 3, okay, where they are supposed to interact. Now, notice that the criteria is all very similar. I'm not going to read all of them. I don't think we have time. Monica, you tell me. Very, very similar, but there are slight differences. And those slight differences are the ones that make all the difference, okay? For example, it says, regarding grammar and vocabulary, shows a good degree of control of a range of simple and some complex grammatical forms. In band 3, it says, should a good degree of control of simple grammatical forms and attempts some complex grammatical forms. So this doesn't mean that he's not very consistent, okay? Sometimes he might try to use a complex form, but maybe not very accurately, all right? Regarding discourse management, if we have a look at band 5, it says produces extended stretches of language with very little hesitation. Contributions are relevant and there is a clear organization of ideas. Uses a range of cohesive devices and discourse markers. But in band 3, it says despite some hesitation. And in band 1, it says produces responses which are extended beyond short phrases despite hesitation. Contributions are mostly relevant despite repetition, okay? Basic cohesive devices. So these little words are the words that make all the difference, okay? As regards pronunciation, let's read band 3. It says intonation is generally appropriate. Sentence and word stress is generally accurately. Individual sounds are generally articulated, okay? Is mostly intelligible, intelligible, and has some control of phonological features in band 1, all right? So you need this in order to mark your students. We could dissect, in a way, this analytical scale and analyze each individual feature within, let's say, each of these criteria. It says, control, the ability to consistently use grammar accurately and appropriately to convey meaning. These questions are very important. They're very interesting. You should ask yourselves or these questions regarding your students. Does the speaker use simplex, complex grammatical forms? To which extent? That will determine the grade, the mark, yes? Range and appropriacy. The variety of words and grammatical, sorry, I can't see that, forms a candidate uses. Does the speaker use a range of appropriate vocabulary? Is it a wide range or just uses appropriate vocabulary? If communication is achieved, full starts, incomplete utterances, ellipses, and reformulation are not penalized. So remember this, yes? They are not native speakers, so they are not penalized. They will not lower the mark if they start their sentences again, if they're not able to complete a sentence, yes? As regards discourse management, we have to consider the length of the answer. Are the answers an appropriate length for the task, or are they very short? Relevance, a contribution that is related to the task and not about something different. Are the contributions relevant? Is there much repetition? How much? Very little, a lot. Coherence and cohesion. Coherence refers to a clear and logical stretch of speech, which can be easily followed. Cohesion refers to a stretch of speech, which is unified and structurally organized. So does the speaker use a range of cohesive devices and discourse markers? Are his answers coherent? Interactive communication. This has to do with what I mentioned before. Initiating and responding. Does the speaker start discussions? Does he introduce new ideas? Developing the interaction actively developing the conversation, keeping the conversation going. Yes. Does the speaker involve the other candidate? Does he try to move the interaction in an appropriate direction? Does the speaker need support? As regards pronunciation, intelligibility has to do with whether you can understand what the candidate is saying or not. Are the answers clear? Can the speaker be understood? As regards intonation, is the speaker's intonation appropriate? Sentence and word stress, does the speaker use sentence stress correctly? Is word stress correct? Are individual sounds clear? Are they correctly produced? Okay, Monica, I don't know, do we have time to watch a video? The idea now, sorry.
Yes, sorry, here I am.
Yes.
I'm back. Yes, I think we have time to watch one of the videos.
Okay, I will ask you if you can take a picture of the analytical assessor. If you have your the analytical scale, the assessor scales, if you have your telephones with you, could you please take a picture of the scale? Because we're going to use it. Okay? Are we ready? Okay, let's move on. We're going to watch part of an interview, only part of one. These girls are Argentinian. They are Argentinian, so you might find similarities with our own students. We're going to watch part 2. I would like you to concentrate only on grammar and vocabulary and discourse management. Okay, so let's mark them only on grammar and vocabulary and discourse management. Let's watch the stretch. Let's watch the bit. And I'm going to ask you to mark them afterwards.
In the mountains, photographs on your own. In this
or parks, for example, Parque Centenario or something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go.
In this part of the test, I'm going to give each of you 2 photographs. I'd like you to talk about your photographs on your own for about a minute and also to answer a question about your partner's photographs. Julia, it's your turn first. Here are your photographs. They show people spending time in the mountains for different reasons. I'd like you to compare the photographs and say what you think people are enjoying about spending time in the mountains, all right?
Okay, so the first picture shows a group of kids and I think one adult who are skiing. Maybe they live near the mountains and they are on a school trip. The second picture shows 3 people, but they don't seem to be together, they don't seem to be a group. The first, the one in the middle is a woman who is like staring at the mountains that are in front of her, and the other guys seem to be like going back. As for the weather, in the first picture it seems to be very cold, of course, because there is snow and they are like their clothes show that. Well, in the second one it still seems cold. It's not warm, but it's not as cold as the first one. And I think that people are enjoying about spending time in the mountains is that in the first one, maybe, as I said, they're on a class trip and they are learning a new sport or just having fun with their classmates. Well, on the second one, maybe they are on a trip and getting to know new places.
Thank you. Malena, which of these things would you prefer to do?
I prefer to do skiing because I think it's a very nice experience. And it's a thing I want to do.
Thank you. Now, Malena, here are your photographs. They show people shopping in different places. I'd like you to compare the photographs and say why the people have decided to go shopping in these places. All right?
Okay. In the first photo shows 2 girls like in a shopping, see clothes and friends' clothes. And the second photo shows a boy in a supermarket, I think, by buying different food. I think in the first photo, the girls decide to go to shopping because they want to follow the new trending of clothes, or they need to buy a gift or something like that. In the second photo, I think the boy, they need to go to the supermarket because they invite to his friends for her house, and they need to buy different food for them and cook something like a cake or something like that.
Thank you. Now, Julia, which of these things would you prefer to do?
I'd rather do what's on the first picture, which is shopping, because I love clothes and fashion, and when I grow up, I would like to be a personal shopper.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see if in the chat you can mark them, okay? What mark would you give Julia in grammar and vocabulary and in discourse management? And what mark would you give Malina in grammar and vocabulary and discourse management? Let's see. Write it in the chat, please.
We remember that there is a short delay, so give them a few extra seconds to type the answers in the chat box.
Yes, and I suppose they also have to check with the analytical scale.
Exactly.
Mm.
I still can't see any answers in the chat
No,
box.
I can't see any either. Let's see. Would you say that Julia's performance was quite good? And did she do what she was asked to do? Well, I suppose that I will tell you then what Cambridge says about these candidates, okay? Julia shows a good degree of control of simple forms and attempts some complex forms. All right, there are lots of examples of Julia's use of complex sentences. Maybe I'd rather spend time with my friends. It's not as cold as the first one. When I grow up, I'd like to be a personal shopper, okay? She uses a wide range of vocabulary. Okay, somebody wrote there, 3.54. Julia could get a 4 in both aspects, says Paula. In fact, Julia got a 4.5, okay, in grammar and vocabulary, and she got a 4.5 in discourse management. Very, very good, okay? Now, let's concentrate on Malena. What mark would you give Malena? I can help you a little bit. It says, Malena shows a good degree of control of simple forms and attempts some complex forms, but also makes some basic errors. And regarding discourse management, some extended language despite hesitation in part 2. All right. Malena 3.5 in both. I'll tell you in a sec. All right. Malena, I would say 2, 2.5. Malena was not as good as Julia. Yes, definitely. Malena 2.53. Okay, I'll tell you. Malena's performance was, she got a 2.5 in grammar and vocabulary. And she got a 2.5 in discourse management, okay? Now, remember that the mark that I'm reading now. Yes, I'm reading the, this is something provided by Cambridge. Marks them throughout the whole exam. Okay, so maybe it's not that fair because they're being tested on the whole exam, not on this part only. So Julia 4.5, 4.5, Malena 2.5, 2.5. Okay. Monica, do we have time for another one or we stop here?
Is it short? Yes, I think we have
It's
time
the
for another.
interactive communication.
It's a little bit longer then.
It's
Okay.
3 minutes.
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's do it. Okay, so now we're going to concentrate on part 3. You were asking me about, I'm having a look at some of the questions about how it goes. Somebody was asking me if this is a debate. No, it's not a debate, it's a conversation. So we're going to watch part 3. And again, now I'm going to ask you to mark them on pronunciation and on interactive communication, okay? Pronunciation and interactive communication. And this is part 3.
Now, I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. Some teenagers don't want to help with the housework, but their parents think they should. Here are some things they talk about and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task. Now, talk to each other about whether teenagers should help their parents with housework each day.
So, would you like to start? Okay, continue. Okay, so I do think that teenagers should help their parents with the housework, but not every day. They should also have time to for themselves and to spend alone listening to music or maybe playing a video game.
I agree with you, and I think too they need to time for different activities after school. For example, they practice handball or football, and they need time for their activities.
Yes, I agree with you. I also think that it's very important for them to also do something else in school or helping their parents. I also think that another important thing is school, because having time to do their homework or to study is very important because it can help them get into a good college and have a better future.
I think the same. And I think they need to be responsible. As you say, they need time for homework or study for a test, and need to they need to be responsible for different things for school or activities, something like that. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I agree with you. They should be responsible, and maybe they can take a lot of their parents so that they make sure they don't have to make sure their kids are doing their homework and everything they have to do. I also think that it's very important that they help, not every day, but they still do it, is because they can learn lots of skills that can help them in the future. Maybe if they live alone, they will use them. What do you think?
As you say, I think they need to be, they need to practical for this future.
Thank you. Now you have about a minute to decide what the most important reason is for teenagers to help their parents with the housework.
I think the best is having time for homework or being responsible, because they need time for the things for school, for different homework, or they need to study for a test. What do you think?
I actually don't agree with you. I think that the best one is that they can learn practical skills, because it can help them with their future. Their life isn't just school, and it has also other things. What do you think?
I agree with you, because they need to be independent in the future. And I think the learning practical is the best, like you say.
Why do you think they need to be independent?
Because in the future they don't have their parents all the time, and they live alone, and they need to know different things for the house or the work or something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't know if you noticed that they came to an agreement very fast, very quickly, and they didn't know what to say. So they were looking at the examiner all the time to see if she was going to stop them, and she didn't stop them, in fact. So they started talking, they continued talking, okay? That is what they are supposed to do. They should talk until they are interrupted, but they have to make sure that they have at least reached an agreement by the end of the minute, okay? All right, so let's discuss pronunciation first. What mark would you give Julia, and what mark would you give Malena? Let's see. So going from band 0 to 5, what mark would you give them for pronunciation? Okay, somebody says Julia 4, Malena 2, Julia 4, Malena 3, Julia 4, Malena 3, Malena 2, 4.5 to Julia. Julia 4.5, Malena 3. All right. Julia gets 4 for pronunciation, and Malena gets 3. Okay. It says Julia, she's generally intelligible with clear delivery and natural rhythm and good flow. She has generally good stress and intonation, sometimes used effectively for emphasis. Her individual sounds are generally accurate. Malena is generally intelligible with a measured delivery, which is somewhat staccato at times. Her stress is usually appropriate at both worth and utterance level. Her sounds are generally accurate, although her initial the is pronounced duh. So notice that they see this. And she sometimes drops final T's and D's, t's and does. All right, so let's concentrate on interactive communication now. And this has to do, remember, with initiating, with responding, keeping the conversation going. Okay, so interactive communication for Julia and Malena. Julia 3, Malena 3. Okay, so interactive communication. Okay, Julia 4, Malena 3. Julia 4, Malena 3, 4.5 and 3.5. Okay. Julia 4 and Malena 3. Yes. Julia did take a more active role, yes, as initiator. Yeah, she did. Okay, so the assessor said that, or says that Julia gets a 5 in interactive communication, and Malena gets a 3.5. Okay, in fact, They say Julia initiates and responds appropriately, often linking contributions to those of her partner. So she takes up what her partner says and continues, yes, and says something else. She attempts to develop the interaction, asking her partner to give more detail. Why do you think they need to be independent? And successfully negotiates towards an outcome. Actually, I don't agree with you. Malena, she mostly initiates and responds appropriately, but does not link what she says to her partner's contributions, except to agree with her. She maintains the interaction by giving her opinion with reasons, but tends to agree with her partner's ideas. In part 3, she comments on the partner's ideas and moves on to give her opinion about another option, while attempting to link with her partner's contribution. I think the same. And I think they need to be responsible, as you say. Yes, so she's trying to link the ideas. Okay, so yeah, more or less everybody said 4.5 or 5 for Julia and 2.5 and 3. Well, this is a very good exercise. I'm going to, I advise you to watch these videos with your students, okay? Maybe you're not going to dissect, you're not going to analyze the video in detail, but you can watch one class, maybe you can watch part 1, and another class, then you concentrate on part 2, and another class, part 3 or part 4. But they need to watch these videos. It helps them a lot, okay? Don't show them the best candidates first, because they might be discouraged, okay? If they see people who are very, very good, all right? So show them different levels. But they need to know what to expect in the exam, as Vero said. The best way to build the students' confidence is to let them know what is expected of them, all right? So they need to watch, they need to practice, yes, these videos. Okay, that is all for me as regards my presentation. I don't know if there are any questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very, very much, Gabriela. Thank you. And there is one question that maybe you could answer briefly that
Yes.
Silvina would like to know. How will they manage part 3 when they are a group of 3? How do they manage?
Yes, it's exactly the same. If you can, practice in a group of 3. If you're in a school or in an institute, practice with a group of 3. If you have a private student, it might be a bit more difficult. It's exactly the same. The same rules apply for turn taking and for initiating and responding, okay? They have to pay attention to what they all say, and one or the other might respond. It has to be a natural conversation, okay? They will be given more time, because if the 3 of them have to speak, it takes a bit longer. If one of them holds the ground, maybe the other one might interrupt nicely by giving her opinion, like, yes, I agree, naturally. Yes, it should sound natural. Or I don't agree with what you're saying or with what you say. But it's exactly the same, okay? They shouldn't worry about this, because it's the same. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I will share my screen and talk to you and share some information about what's next. Okay, so you can also type, oh, my video. You can also type your questions in the chat box. I'm going to share briefly what's next and what's new for 2025. Cambridge qualifications. Remember that all Cambridge qualifications are aligned to the Common European Framework and also to the Cambridge English Scale. There are exams for children like who are aged 7 to 12, pre-A1 starters, A1 movers, A2 flyers. There are also exams for teenagers, 11 to 18. Remember that the exams are called for schools, A2 key for schools, B1 preliminary for schools, B2 first for schools, but this means for students who are school age, not necessarily that they are preparing exams in schools. Language schools, private teachers can also prepare their students for these for schools exams. There are also tests for adults, A2 key and B1 preliminary, B2 first, C1 advanced, and C2 proficiency. All these exams, students can sit for them with Buenos Aires Open Center. Well, as from last year, in fact, as from April last year, we have been started offering digital exams. They used to be called computer-based. Now they are Cambridge English Qualifications Digital, and the platforms which they run on are slightly different, and they are also more student-friendly. And students can choose to sit for these exams, which are available from A2 key up to C2 proficiency. Which are the digital features that these exams have? Listening, which is something that students value a lot, the use of headphones and volume control. Writing, another issue, because they have the word count, they can edit their text, and many students, I'm sure that you will agree with me, have very poor handwriting nowadays. So writing their answers on the computer is really wonderful for them. Reading, they can write notes, highlighting features, and speaking, very important that speaking will remain face-to-face to allow you to demonstrate your real-world communication skill. Other benefits, fast. Results will be delivered in 5 to 10 working days. Flexible for the examination centers because we can offer lots of sessions along the year, practically 365 days a year. But please contact us to find out which dates are available. And secure because not all the tests are randomized for increased security. That means that not all students will have the same test at the same time. The question, the tasks. Test and train. Well, this is something new, that it is digital practice for students. And it comes in two versions, class-based, and students can use it on their mobile telephone or they can have it on the computer. And the class-based version is available with the following courses: Open World, Complete, Compact, Prepare, and Think. But you can also purchase Test and Train self-study. What's inside the Test and Train self-study? 6 sets of exam practice tasks: reading and use of English, listening and writing. And there is also one complete speaking test video. If you are interested in offering Test and Train, please contact us and we will help you and guide you as how you can use it with your students. Something new, authentic digital practice test. Here you get the full digital exam experience, and it contains one full test, including reading and use of English, listening, writing. Writing also has sample answers, examining comments, and also a downloadable speaking paper. Students can attempt the test up to 3 times, but they will only be graded the first time that they attempt it. And they will also be timed, as in a real test. And you can also, as a teacher, monitor progress with the teacher version. Once again, contact us and we will provide more information. And there's lots of information also on our webpage. The authentic digital practice test is available in all these different levels, and proficiency will be coming soon. Well, something new, starters and movers digital tests. This is something really new. We are still carrying out trial tests with some of our preparation centers. This exam is totally different. In pre-A1 starters, there is, welcome to the underwater world, and they will follow this underwater world, sorry, and they will create themselves as avatars and work their way along this map in the Turtle Island, completing tasks and earning rewards. This is really very, very nice, but also please contact us for more information. And we also have the movers, A1 Movers Digital. In this case, it's a dinosaur island. And they also create an avatar and work their way along the map. Flyers will be available, the Flyers Digital will be available in 2027. We also offer multi-level tests. We have IELTS and Lingua Skill. IELTS is through the British Council. We are a venue for IELTS. Remember that, well, the name is International English Language Testing System, recognized by over 10,000 organizations, multi-level test. There are two types, academic and general, and remember that it is valid for 2 years. So it is important that your students know when they have to present their certificate so that they can sit for it between the 2 years. Lingua Skill is a test for adults 18 and plus years of age, and it is modular, and it is also very fast because you get your it is 60 to 8. I was thinking about the results. I'm trying to go fast. The reading and listening takes between 60 and 85 minutes, 45 minutes for writing and 15 minutes for speaking. It's online, on demand, with remote monitoring, computer with access. Now, there is going to be a new Lingua Skill, and we will be sharing information with you in the coming months. Exam sessions 2025. We have exam sessions available for June and July, paper-based and digital. I think that paper-based must have closed already for the June session, but we do have sessions available to sit for digital exams. You can also visit our webpage and you will find what sessions are available. Second semester, August the 1st to September 15th, enrollment will take place. And you can contact us in info@bauk.com.ar. Well, I would also like to share that we have venues in different parts of the country, in the city of Buenos Aires, and also in what is now known as AMBA. Then we also have Trenquelauquen, América, Pehuajó, Chacabuco, Bragado, Saladillo, San Antonio de Areco, Campana, Zárate, Mar del Plata, Pinamar, well, lots of cities, Tandil, Azul, Olavarría. I know that some teachers from these different cities have registered today. Entre Ríos, Gualeguaychú, Misiones, Puerto Iguazú, Oberá, Posadas, Santo Tomé, en Corrientes, Santa Rosa La Pampa, Comodoro Rivadavia en Chubut, Caleta Olivia en Santa Cruz, and Ushuaia en Tierra del Fuego. So we've got sessions up north in Puerto Iguazú and south in Ushuaia. For paper-based exams, you know that students can choose to sit paper-based exams or digital exams. All enrollment, all registration is totally online. Payment, Mercado Pago, can use credit card or debit card, and families, when they are enrolling their children, they need to complete this form with all the details as required here. Preparation centers, you know that we have lots of preparation centers, and you can register as a preparation center, as a school, as a language school, and also as a private teacher. It's important for you to update your contact details so that you can access results online, so that you can use the Cambridge Preparation Center and the BAUC logos. Remember that as from this year, in order to use the Preparation Center logo, you must have registered a minimum of 10 candidates in 2024. You will also receive a Cambridge certificate for schools or language schools or teachers who enroll 100 or more students per year. The Cambridge English newsletter and the Buenos Aires Open Center newsletter. If you are already registered as a preparation center, I really and strongly recommend that you download the performance reports. This will give you an idea of how your students have achieved in their exam compared to other results in Argentina, in other parts of the world. You can also download a user guide. And well, if you need more information, just contact us. But don't forget to have a look at the performance reports and use them in your parents' meetings. It's really very, very important information. This is the new logo I was telling you about for preparation centers who have registered more than 10 candidates in 2024. And you see that now it's changed the color, and it also has the years because it will be valid for 2 years, 2025 and 2026. And this is our logo. Something else that I want to share with you, Grow with Cambridge. Last year we had the first edition, this is the second edition, and well, there are lots of very nice prizes, and you can also, it's as it says here in Spanish, participar por un viaje a Cambridge para asistir al Cambridge Leader Summit. So please contact us and please register for Grow with Cambridge. Remember that we also have our Biblioteca de Recursos, as we call it in Spanish, where you can download all the resources that are available, all the free resources available to prepare your students for Cambridge English qualifications. Well, I don't know, I have gone really fast. So if you have any questions, and yes, just one thing. I wanted, while we answer questions, I would like you to join us on our channel. We have a channel that is called BAUC for Teachers, and I would like you to join us. Yes, Mariana.
There's one question in the chat related to digital exams. If we do have headphones in our venue, yes, we do. Our lab is already set up, so candidates do not to bring anything apart from their ID, water, and if they want to bring a pen or pencil to take notes during the exam, they also can. But yes, we do have headphones. I don't see any other questions in the chat box, but let's wait a minute just to see if something appears.
Yes, here are our contact details. And once again, please join us on our channel. That is where we are always sharing all the latest information.
Okay, Moni, I think there's no other questions.
Okay, and well, before I thank everybody, I would like to mention that we will be sending a thank you email with the presentations and with a link so that if anybody needs to download their certificate. So thank you very much, Verónica, Vero, as I always call you. Thank you very, very much, Gabi, and well, Martín Tavares, Melissa. I don't know if you all want to say a quick bye-bye and see you in the next
Monica, and thank
seminar.
you, everybody there.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.